Hey guys, King of Charmanders here. So I wanted to start off this video with a small master list of what you might see in the Love Cup. As you see here, there is no simple way to put it. There are a lot of things here that are viable, because there are not a lot of checks to some things. I'll explain more of that in a technical summary, but as you see here, there's a lot of things in this meta that can work. Keyword is can, but as you see here, there's a lot of archetypes. A lot of intricate strategies as well as unintricate strategies, as in tap teams and strong elemental Pokemon like Charizard, Alomomola, and Electrode. You have Bug Steel hybrids in Wormadam, Scizor, and Wormadam, Scizor. I don't know if Fortress is allowed here, but like you have those anti-charm / Razor hybrids, which actually do well. You have Rockto / Smackdown and Magcargo, as well as Crustle. There's a lot of things here that work. Because of that, there's no simple way to put it. There is no meta simplified. It's gonna be absolute chaos. As you see here, with a long laundry list, there's not a lot of things you can do or make that will check the entire meta itself for the Love Cup. Without further ado, let's get started. Hey guys, King of Charmanders here. Alright, so the 7-time top team creator is going to tell you what your possible best teams for the Love Cup are. Now, take all those charts about people doing all of these meta-simplified guides or whatever and throw them out the door. Because, in reality, there is no simplified meta for the Love Cup. It's going to be all over the place. You're going to see Alomomolas, Charizards, Lickitungs, well, not really the XL, but like till later, but you can possibly see Medichams, you can, like, fighters, you're also going to see Charmers, you even have things like Smackdown users / Rockthrow users, Slowking, Shadow Vileplume, the Vile Razor Leafers. You can see so many things that there is no set meta. There are things that are going to check each other, there are things that are going to kill each other, there's something you are going to like and something you are going to hate, but there is no simple way to put about it. This Cup is going to be absolute chaos. There's no real thing that really beats everything else in this meta. So without further ado, let's get to team building. Alright, as always, please consider donating at ppoke.com. Here we're going to use a team builder. So, for the team builder, we're going to build the most logical team for the Love Cup. Now, obviously, in the Love Cup, you're going to see a bajillion things, but you need checks against Charmers. Charmers are going to be your worst nightmare, or the nightmare of many, because there's not many checks in this meta. The checks to the Charmers are basically the poison types, which are basically Scolipede, and then you also have a Shadow Vileplume, which happens to be one of the dreaded Shadow Razor Leaf users. You also have the steel typings like Wormadam, and you also have Scizor. So there's a few things that do have a few checks against the fairy typings. However, against most Charmers. However, here's the problem. A lot of the Charmers can actually run you over the 2 shields. So, how do we stop it? Well, you can go, here's one of the best things you can do. You can go triple anti-charm. Charizard Wing Attack is the ¡1 lead for a reason. It does a lot of work against a lot of the meta outside of Electrode and Alomomola. So if you take out the water, like the 2 viable waters in, well, there's actually 3, but there's only 2 that really do like fast move water damage, which is Alomomola and Milotic. So, and then Electrode. So those are 3 things you have to look out for. So we need checks against Alomomola and Electrode. What beats either of those? As you see here, it's recommending fighters. So let's see. Alomomola is a water type, and then we need coverage with Charizard. Charizard is weak to water, so obviously you're going to use grass, right? Wrong. So what are we going to do? We already have a check against the Charmer, so we can use Medicham XL. So Medicham XL. I generally discourage you from using fighters just because there's a lot of Charmers. However, that doesn't mean they aren't viable. If you have 2 checks to Charmers, then you can run fighters because they can work out in the Love Cup. As you see here, we flip this. Great coverage, great safety. So, like I said, it's not fighters aren't completely obsolete. You can use them as long as you have checks to Charmers. So as you see, the Charizard Medicham cord actually works pretty well. You have your checks against Charmers, and they cover each other pretty well, except for Slowking and Slowbro. Two things which you can see, but I wouldn't rule them out. Alright, so we have Medicham. Now we need something in the back. Now, Charizard, Electrode, and Medicham. This is a team I've been thinking about. As you see here, it doesn't have a considerable amount of both because of Charizard and Electrode, but it does a decent amount of trick. Electrode will be your safe switch, Charizard is your lead, Medicham is your closer. As you see here, these Pokemon complement each other really well. Now, the thing about Clefable and Wigglytuff, if you catch them in the lead, that's great, because if you catch them against Charizard, you do really well. Electrode can take them out in the closer. So, if we do a Matrix on PvPoke, run the new, open link in a new tab. If you run a Matrix, we're going to run a Matrix real quick. If you run a Matrix with Electrode, with the Electrode versus, or just do it, we'll just do a battle simulator. So we'll just do a simulator, so we'll do Electrode versus Clefable. As you see here, if you break shields, you can take out Clefable in the zeros. So you could just charge it in the zeros. So a strat we will do is our win cons for this team, if we face Charmers, is to get the Charmer in the lead or break the shield so that we can close out with possibly Charizard, or we could close out Electrode. Now, there's a way you can close out with Medicham. However, this is the scenario you have to have. In order for you to close out with a Medicham, you need to have a substantial energy lead. So your energy has to be, let's assume you have 49 energy. So you basically beat the crap out of something to go down. Medicham can take the matchup in the closer if it has a like really good energy lead. So as you see here, now that's just regular Medicham. If it's XL, Medicham has an out. So that's what you do. As you see here, Medicham has a lot of chances to take it, but it needs an elite energy. You can even have 42 energy, or 35. So assuming that you have like an Ice Punch worth of energy. If you have an Ice Punch worth of energy, you can barely squeeze out the match. So 5 counters in. So we have ways out against Clefable and other matchups with this team. But that's our win conditions. Our 2 win conditions, if we face Charmers, as I mentioned before, is to catch them in the lead or close them out in the closer. Take out their shields, and then you can nuke them with Electrode, Medicham, or Charizard. Second one. The second team you're probably going to face is the Shadow Razor Leafers. If you see a Mega Tap team, which would probably have the Shadow Razor Leafer in the lead or the back, well, hopefully you could catch it in the lead, because Charizard, like, it could still shred through a majority of your team. So, as you see here, if you look at the back row, if you don't catch the Wigglytuff or Clefable in the lead and they go through your back row, 2 shield Shadow Razor Leaf can actually shred through a lot of things. So yeah, just be careful. That's one of your big weaknesses, is Shadow Razor Leaf with this team. However, this team has a extremely low threat score. As you see here, here's your potential threats. It has coverage against you really don't have any holes with this team. As you see here. Charizard takes out the Charmers, Charizard takes out your Grass types and your Hybrids, and Medicham takes out your fellow fighters, the Rock types, the Normal types, and it can take out Alomomola and Electrode, as you see here. And Electrode itself can take out Alomomola as well as itself, as long as it has energy lead. So this is a very, very effective team. As you see here, Charizard, Medicham, Electrode. Again, Electrode your safe switch, Charizard your lead, Medicham is your closer. This team does very, very well. Low threat score, any threat score, like threat score minus 500 is really dang good. But as you see here, it actually covers the meta very well and puts a substantial amount of shield pressure. Again, with fighters, you don't really have to worry about if you have 2 checks to your back row, or if you have a strat or a closeout strat, you could take out the Charmers. Switch into Electrode, then use Charizard or Medicham to take out the Charmers, or nuke the Charmer in the back with Medicham or Charizard if you can. Alright, so the second team I have built up is the Fishy team. If you love the Fishy, and if you have one, Alomomola is very powerful in this league because of how tanky it is. There's not a lot of checks to Alomomola other than the Grass or Electric types. So if you have coverage against both of those, you can possibly do very well. As you see here, Fishy has incredibly good stats. Its coverage on its own, everything, it's really good against this entire meta. As I mentioned, you're weak to Electrode and anything that has Grass type attacks, or basically your own typing. So for this one, you can actually run a Charmer in the back with Alomomola. Alomomola, because of its bulk, as you see here, very, very strong with one Charmer. I do recommend Clefable over Wigglytuff just because you don't have that fighter weakness. Alomomola can lose to Medicham, so or Scrafty, so it can lose to either one. So then just be careful. So Clefable gives you that hard counter or hard wall to it because there's not a lot of ghosts. Wigglytuff does have the bulk, but there's not a lot of ghosts. And now for a third, you can use either, in my honest opinion, you can use a fighter. As you see here, you can use Medicham XL. Medicham XL to close. And then you fire it up, and then as you see here, it's pretty decent. Has a lot of checks, very, very low threat score. Other than the other team I featured, this one is probably one of the safest teams as far as as you see here, if it takes out a lot of things, so you take out a lot of like popular leads because Alomomola can take on the Charmers. As you see here, it takes out Charizard. It doesn't take out Electrode, but it takes out the Charmers. As you see here, it takes out both Charmers. It takes out a lot of the Steel Water hybrids like Scizor, Wormadam. It takes those out as well. It even takes out Scolipede. So as you see, Alomomola is a very, very powerful lead. Your back row of Clefable and Medicham, as you see here, it's actually able, it covers, there's a lot of coverage against, you have double coverage against Alomo's weakness. You have double coverage against Churum. And you don't necessarily have double coverage against Shadow Vileplume, however, you do have outs. So with Medicham and with Clefable, if you both run Psychic with Medicham and Clefable, you can take out a Shadow Vileplume. As you see here, we'll run Clefable. With this team, you will run Psychic, so don't run. You can run Moonblast or Meteor Mash, either one. I do recommend you run Psychic, because with Psychic, here's what happens. With Vileplume, you have outs. As you see here, you have an out as long as you have an energy lead. So let's say you have 6, 12, 18. Let's say you have 4 Charms of Energy. So if you have 4 Charms of Energy, Clefable can take it out with a Psychic, as you see here. Hell, you can have like, what? I think you can have like even just 2 Charms worth of energy. So as long as you have a little bit of energy, you can take it out. Hell, you can have 1 Charm worth of energy. Have 6 Charm. I think you can take it out with just 1 Charm. No, you can't. You need 2. So you need a minimum of 2 Charms ahead of energy in order to take out a Shadow Vileplume. But with Psychic, you have an out. And then with Medicham, Medicham does lose in certain scenarios, as you see here. So Medicham does lose, as you see here. Or Medicham doesn't lose. So as you see, Medicham can win in the 0s and the 1s against Shadow Vileplume, well, XL can. So as you see here, if you have a good XL IV, you can win in the 1s and the 0s against Shadow Vileplume. So you can survive. Here's the 0s, here's the 1 shield. But you have, the problem with this one, I think you have to bait with, you can't go straight Psychic. If you're in the 1s, you have to bait with, you can actually just go double Psychic, never mind. So, that's what makes Medicham really good against Shadow Vileplume, or this team really good. You have 2 outs against your worst nightmares, which is Poison. So, this team, as I see here, very, very powerful, very, very consistent. The Charmer in the back will allow you to have 2 shield charm strats if you would like. Medicham does do a decent amount of damage. Alomomola and Clefable can take care of the Charmers itself. And like I said, you do have outs against Shadow Vileplume, which is your worst nightmare in this team, because Alomomola loses to it. And Clefable's charms are resisted. However, what you can do is send in Medicham, and then get those punches through. And then you could just, force the shields for Shadow Vileplume, and then you can finish it off with Clefable. So there's a way to finish your way out of this. However, as you see, Alomomola even has Psychic, so Alomomola even has a way out. So Alomomola has a way out against her. With this team, you have 1 move that covers a lot of things. As you see here, Alomomola can finish off Vileplume in the 0s. So as long as you have in the 0s. So with this team, you have 3 outs against everything. Or you have an out against your biggest weakness. Now, if you look at the threats, there is a little, as you see, you do have a ton of coverage, but you do have to be careful of, you do kind of have to be careful of Charizard, because if Alola gets taken out, Clefable and Medicham are going to have a hard time, just because Charizard, if it's a Wing Attack Zard, it's hard time. You'll have a rough time, because it takes out Medicham, and a Wing Attack Zard will generate energy quickly, so that's one of the big things you have to watch out. Watch out for Wing Attack Charizard. Alright, here. So, do you want to be a beamer? Do you like beaming things to death? Well, I have something for you. If you love Electrode, this is actually... The reason why I think this is like the top 3 team, or the one I've created, is just because you have Hyper Beam Electrode. Now, here's the thing about Hyper Beam Electrode. With Hyper Beam Electrode, if you run Hyper Beam Electrode with shield advantage, here's what you get. You get a 95%. Now, if you're in the 1 to 0s, here's what happens. Hyper Beam Electrode in the 1 to 0s beats everything in the meta. There is nothing that stops it. It beats everything. You literally beam everything in the Love Cup meta to death as long as they're in the 0s and you have a shield. Even in the 0s to 0s, like if you're in the no shield, here's what happens. 77%, so still very high. However, there is very few mons, well, I think this is like one of the only mons, in the 1 to 0s that actually beats the entire meta. Or actually just the entire Love Cup in general. So this team is incredibly powerful, and it features Hyper Beam Electrode in the closer or as a switch. If you beam through shields, it does an obscene amount of damage. And if you don't beam through shields, like, you still grab a shield. So it's a very powerful team. Obviously, this team features, like, top 3 Pokemon in all positions. However, they're all good together for a good reason. So if you rate the team, as you see here, you have great coverage against the entire meta. Bulk is average because of Electrode and Charizard. However, it's not that bad. As you see, it's very safe. Safety is pretty good, and it's pretty consistent. So you'll do a deep amount of damage. It's just a bulk. Against the meta, as you see here, you do very well against everything except for Scrafty. Scrafty is the only concern of this team. I don't expect to see too many Scrafties, however, this is pretty much the only big weakness of this team. Other than this, you have coverage against a lot of things in the meta. Particularly, as you see here, Scolipede as well as the Charmers. So Charmers, Clefable, Wigglytuff both fall to Charizard and Alomomola, so you have double coverage against that. If you have Shadow Vileplume, Charizard takes out Shadow Vileplume, Alomomola will take out Shadow Vileplume, and also Shadow Vileplume will fall if we do a battle simulator. Here's what happens. So if you do a battle simulator and you put Shadow Vileplume versus a Hyper Beam Electrode, here's what happens. Vileplume, you put it as a Shadow, you hit battle, and guess what? If you put it in the closer, or if you give it shields, Electrode will beam a Shadow Vileplume to death. As you see here, 131 damage. If you get any Electrode, fill it up with enough energy to fire a Hyper Beam, guess what? This will one-shot a Shadow Vileplume. So, you have outs against Shadow Vileplume with Electrode. You also have outs with Alomomola. Alomomola with Psychic can take out a Shadow Vileplume in the closer if you can land a Psychic, as you see here. Well, it does a decent amount of damage, so if you have Chip on the Shadow Vileplume, then you come in with Alomomola, you can take it out with a Psychic. Or as you see here, as long as you're in the closer and this thing doesn't have a lot of energy, you basically take it out. Sludge Bomb and Moonblast take a long time to get to. A long time, because Razor Leaf only generates 4 energy. So you can do this very comfortably. But as you see here, this team is very, very strong, again, with Hyper Beam Electrode. Your only big weakness is Scrafty. However, with Charmers running around, I don't expect to see too many Scrafties running around. So as you see, this team does pretty great. It does have a higher threat score than the other 2 that I featured. However, like I mentioned, if it has top rated Pokemon, all these Pokemon are very easy to obtain. If you play the Kanto Cup, you probably have all 2. You probably have Charizard and Electro. If you don't have the fish, unfortunately, this thing like this. If you don't have the fish, a great substitute would be this. So we take out the fishy, and you have Charizard. The fishy is like really valuable. However, you can't substitute it. If you don't have a fishy, put Medicham. Medicham can work with this team. Not as safe, however, it does have the threat score. I think this is the this is the first team that I featured, but yeah, if you don't have Fishy, you can sub with Medicham. If you don't want to use a fighter, you can use a Charmer as your back row. So just like you could do the 2-shield charm strat if you would like. As you see, if you put Clefable in this matchup, you do have you suffer bulk. However, it still has it's still decent against the meta. However, it's like I said, what makes this team really work is just the bulk. Alomomola. So Alomomola makes this team really good. As you see, this is the 3rd best team I could think of, and just because you have Hyper Beam Electrode. Obviously, there's a lot of other variations you could do with Hyper Beam Electrode, but that's pretty much, this team works very well against the overall meta. And that's it! Hopefully these top 3 teams either give you the team you want, or give you an idea of what you want to play. Alomomola, Electrode, and Charizard are very powerful in this meta. Not only because they are top ticks, but they also do a lot of damage. So Electrode charges very quickly, does a lot of damage. Not a lot of checks to Electrode because there's not a lot of ground types in this meta, or Pokemon with ground type attacks. That's why Electrode's very safe. Same thing with Alomomola. The thing about this, the reason why this cup is very difficult to navigate is because there's not a lot of there's not a lot of things that check specific Pokemon. For example, Alomomola is best type. The best checkings to Alomomola is Electrode and Shadow Vileplume. So if you take out that one specific mon they have, then one Pokemon you have is actually incredibly safe. For example, if you take out the Electrode from an Alomomola, that team is very safe. Our Alomomola is very safe against a majority of the meta, especially with shields or shield advantage. Same thing with Electrode. Without grass types running around, or without a ground type Pokemon running around, if you take out the Charmer or you take out the Fighter, as you see here, it's weak to Charmers and Fighters. You take out either one of these, it can go to town against a lot of things. And like I mentioned, with Hyper Beam Electrode in the closer, it beats a lot of things. In the 1-0s, Hyper Beam Electrode will beat the rest of the entire Love Cup. Nothing stops Electrode in the 1-0s. Or if you have an Electrode with a Beam banked, it can KO. It can OKO a lot of things. Like it can OKO a lot of things. In the 2-to-1s, Electrode has a 95% win ratio, clean. So it's very very powerful. Hyper Beam Electrode is very powerful. Obviously, because there's so many archetypes, as I mentioned in the first slide, there's too many things to really navigate a great team that's going to cover the entire meta. That's what sucks. There's so many Pokemon here that have little checks. There is no team out here that's going to cover the entire meta. You will have a weakness. Best way to play that is to navigate out of those weaknesses with either movesets, like I mentioned, like using Psychic, like for example, Alomomola and Clefable having Psychic to wipe out Shadow Victory Bell, or Shadow Vileplume. Well, if Shadow Victory, thank God there's no Shadow Victory Bell in this one. But yeah, that's the best way to do it. So, like I mentioned, build a team. If you have any questions, just put in the comments below. I will definitely try to answer as much as I can. I'll be doing more of these team building videos as the Love Cup comes out for the next 2 days. So if you like Charmers, if you like Razor Leafers, I will build a team for that. I will make a tap video team, and then we'll try to create a full anti-meta team for this cup. Well, we'll try, because like I mentioned, there's so little cups that what anti-meta will be is basically targeting hopefully the most popular patterns, which will likely be Charmers, etc. Anyways, guys, if you like this video, please like and subscribe. Again, I'll be doing more content for this, so to help you prepare for the Love Cup. Good luck in Go Valley sets, and I'll see you on the next video.